mynews.studio.
A third of the planet's surface is now officially under a single binding treaty. But what happens if countries don't stick to the rules?
Today is January 26, 2026. The United Nations High Seas Treaty has just entered into force. This now covers 2/3 of all the world's oceans, meaning everything outside national waters. It took decades to get here, but for the first time, there's a legal framework to manage and protect the high seas.
That's significant. We're talking about areas that have always been a bit of a Wild West. No single country in charge, so not much real oversight until now. The treaty lets us create marine protected areas, regulate resource extraction, and aims to stop the loss of marine biodiversity.
Well, the high seas are where a lot of commercial fishing happens, and where new industries like deep-sea mining are just getting started. These areas are also vital for climate regulation and global food security. If the high seas collapse, global fisheries and even climate stability are at risk. But here's a challenge. How do you actually enforce a treaty like this when there isn't even a permanent secretariat yet?
Good question. Right now, the UN Division for Ocean Affairs and the Law of the Sea, DOALOS, is standing in as an interim secretariat. There's also a preparatory commission, which is busy setting up the actual rules and institutions. The first big milestone will be the Conference of Parties, or COP1, within a year. Until then, countries have to do environmental impact assessments for any activities they control in these waters. And they're supposed to publish those assessments, which adds a layer of transparency. But does that actually make it enforceable?
It's complicated. Compliance relies a lot on collective action and transparency. There are tools for monitoring, things like vessel tracking and satellite surveillance. But in the end, it's about whether countries are willing to hold each other accountable and act together. The more countries ratify, the stronger it gets. But real success depends on follow-through. When it comes to designating protected areas, how does that process actually play out?
It starts with countries identifying possible high seas sites, using the best available science. They submit proposals to the preparatory commission, and then at future COP meetings, the decision-making body votes on which areas to protect. Priority goes to sites with high biodiversity, or those most at risk from threats like overfishing or deep-sea mining. There's a clear target: protect 30% of the ocean by 2030.
Not quite yet, but this treaty could speed things up. The main idea is to use what's called area-based management tools. That means once a site is approved, there are specific rules, sometimes even bans, on things like extraction. But what about countries that don't have the resources to participate or enforce the treaty?
That's a real challenge. The treaty actually requires capacity building and technology transfer, especially for developing countries and small island states. There's also a rule to share the benefits from marine genetic resources. Some organizations like Bloomberg Philanthropies have promised financial support. But there are calls for more aid to help these countries meet their obligations. Is that enough for everyone to truly participate?
It's a good starting point, but the test will be implementation. This is one of the first times a binding international agreement covers such a large, shared resource. The stakes are high. Healthy oceans support food security, global economies, and help regulate the climate. So, will this treaty actually make a difference?
That depends on how quickly and fully countries commit, especially to enforcement and support for the countries that need it most. The treaty lays the groundwork, but the next year will be critical to see if global cooperation on the high seas can really work.
So just to sum up, the UN High Seas Treaty is now in effect, covering 2/3 of the world's oceans. It's meant to protect biodiversity, regulate how resources are used, and make sure all countries can participate fairly. The next steps depend on transparent monitoring, strong cooperation, and real support for developing nations.
And the big question is, can this global agreement live up to its promise? We'll be following what happens. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for tuning in. This episode was brought to you by mynews.studio. You can try it now for free.